I am going to jump right in because I'm very conscious of our time. And I want to welcome everybody to the Thunderbird School of Global Management here at Arizona State University. We are so honored and delighted that you are here. My name is Dr. Charlotte Griffey-Brown. I am the Dean and Director General of the Thunderbird School of Global Management. And I'm very excited to actually have the opportunity to not only welcome you, but also welcome this incredible panel. And the panel that you're about to hear from actually speaks to a topic that lies at the heart of our region's future: energy security and its critical relationship to economic growth and community development. As we navigate together a very complex and rapidly evolving global energy landscape, geopolitical shocks, socioeconomic shocks, environmental shocks, all of these things continue to have a profound effect on energy production and pricing and distribution. And these disruptions highlight the urgent need for a really coordinated effort to strengthen energy security across North America. The Arizona-Sonora region, with its unique geographical and economic ties, is poised to play a key role in this collaboration. As you know, at the federal level, both the United States and Mexico face the challenge of balancing energy infrastructure development with the need for sustainability and competitiveness. Meanwhile, regionally, Arizona and Sonora are positioned to work together in diversifying energy sources that can meet the demands of economic growth while also ensuring environmental responsibility. The USMCA offers a framework for cross-border cooperation, yet the energy sector really remains highly politicized and subject to debate. In this panel, we will explore how the Arizona-Sonora region can contribute to North America's energy security while also addressing key challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It's an honor for me to introduce this panel. I'm going to give you, I'm going to actually give them the floor since we're running short on time. And how this is going to run is that each of them in turn will come up, introduce themselves, say a few words, giving us their perspective. And then once we sit down, I have some questions that we'll talk through together. So please join me in welcoming everyone here.
Thank you very much for inviting us to this forum. I'm Juan Pablo Lopez, also known as Mr. JP. I'm a White Eagle COO for Mexico and Latin America. We are a company that provides consultant services for end users in Mexico to link their necessities of energy with the sources and their plants' needs. I'm going to try to focus the discussion on the energy markets and connecting the potential of the renewable energy resources in the region. US and Mexico have different mechanisms and trade agreements that provide a platform for international collaboration. In fact, Mexico is Arizona's largest trading partner, with nearly 12 billion in imports and 8 billion in exports last year. Arizona infrastructure supports international trade and tariffs with 6 international ports of entry. Visitors from Mexico contributes between 60 and 70% of sales tax revenue at the border communities. The automotive industry in Arizona and Sonora produce around 1,500 vehicles daily, supporting more than 50,000 employees in the region. These two regions have a long history of interaction. Nearly 3.6 million people from Mexico choose Arizona as a travel destination. But pointing this conversation to the energy markets, We have 26 pipeline cross-border from Texas to California, on which 6 natural gas border crossings are located here in Arizona, around 1 BCF of natural gas daily flowing from north to south. The natural gas pipelines exports from the U.S. to Mexico have increased. The demand grew in Mexico and the production declined, so we have this necessity today and I think for the upcoming years. And furthermore, LNG export projects are also developing in this area. We have 3 big new LNG projects in the regions. Probably you have been heard about the Saguaro LNG project. It's also known as Mexico Pacific Limit, a 2 BCF facility. ECA Phase 2 and Vista Pacifico that will add 1 BCF of gas demand in this region. This additional demand will create important opportunities for industrials, for attracting new manufacturing in this region because increasing access to low-cost energy in this area. More than ever, energy security is linked with prosperity and development of entire countries and should be considered as a component of regional stability and human development. Improving natural gas access and storage capacity will be essential to increasing Mexico's ability to attract nearshoring investments, as well as restore investor confidence in the energy sector. Natural gas will allow Mexico to better leverage its advantage in key manufacturing sectors as well. To get into new markets, in the first panel they were talking about the semiconductor manufacturing, a highly energy intensive industry under development in this region. I think Sonora has many projects in semiconductor. Natural gas as a cleaner fuel also benefits Mexico's progress in the energy transition, including as a potential avenue for eventual development of blue hydrogen hubs through the country. This is very valuable for corporations to consider that need to consider environmental regulation and standards such as carbon emissions. But to get advantage of this new demand and new offers of natural gas and cheap energy in this region, Mexico will need to fortify their pipeline networks, their transmission lines to overcome with new markets. Public and private partnership will be key, especially to developing additional infrastructure and to develop storage. Right now, Mexico don't have any or they have a very lack of storage capacity in the country. Talking about the renewables sources, the Arizona and Sonora, as you know, have a great potential for development of renewable energies. The Sonora Desert have sunlight and vast open land, essential elements to developing solar generation projects. And nowadays, with the new administration in Mexico, I think we're going to have like a different view in renewables. I think that the new administration have made some announcement that they're intended to invest around 14 billion in renewable to increase the energy production up to 50%. Right now, the portfolio for electricity generation, we have like 20% of renewables in Mexico. Arizona has some similar numbers in the use of renewable energies. And for ensuring the energy security in the region in both countries, taking this approach to the renewable sector will be a key and fundamental decision. But Only time will tell if Mexico will be able to overcome the challenges of the energy market, to expand the energy mix, and take advantage of the nearshoring opportunities. Thanks for your time. The panelists will addressing these subjects a little bit more. Thanks.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. Good afternoon. I'm Abraham Zamora. I'm with Sempra Infrastructure based in Mexico City. And today, I'm also representing the Mexican Energy Association. I was invited, thank you for the invitation, Chucho, to talk more about the power sector in Mexico, because you have much of gas with the other panelists, so I'm going to address the power sector. The Mexican Energy Association is the largest power association in Mexico. All our members have together 37 gigawatts of power generation installed capacity. That represents 85% of the private installed capacity in the country. And we see that we have, because of the nearshoring opportunities to attract investment to Mexico, we have a lot of interest to participate, contributing with affordable, reliable, and clean energy. That is something that specifically all the investors want to have to take those investments to Mexico. During the past years, the demand for electricity has been increasing by 2.7%, and we are expecting that in the coming years, this will be more or less 4% a year. If we want to bring the investments to Mexico because of the nearshoring, we have a number that we need to have another 37 gigawatts of new power generation in Mexico. That means more or less 40 US billions that are needed to invest in power generation, and this will be the double of the current investment that CFE is doing in the sector. CFE is doing each year 3.7 US billion of investment each year in electricity, and we will need in the next 5 years more or less 8 US billion to cover this demand. Why we need this amount of investment is because today we have 89 gigawatts of installed capacity. However, the real capacity that we can use daily is more or less 53 gigawatts. And during the summer, when we have this peak of demands, we reach more or less 51 gigawatts. What I mean is that we are very close to the real capacity that we have, and that's the reason that we have los apagones, no? The blackouts. Yeah, the blackouts. So in the next year, as I was saying, we need to invest to have 37.8 gigawatts, and we in the last 15 years, between 2008 and 2023, we more or less in 15 years we create the same capacity. We create in the last 15 years 37, 38 gigawatts of capacity, and that is the capacity that we need to build in the next 5 years. So it is not only something about resources, about money, is something about the real capacity that we have as a country to do, to execute those investments and to build that infrastructure. That's the amount of the effort that we need to do. And the other effort that is very important that we need to do in the next coming years is about the transmission and distribution lines. Today, the most important challenge to have the power and to take the power to the points where it is needed is because we don't have transmission lines or enough transmission lines. So, and the amount more or less that we need for the transmission lines is other 12 US billion that is needed for the next 5 years to have enough business transmission lines to add more power generation to the grid. No? And this is also very important because all the renewables that we need to for the system needs transmission lines to be used. So this is my first comment that I want to add to this conversation. Why is important for Sonora, Arizona region? Because as Juan Pablo already mentioned, in this region we have a lot of potential to do renewables, particularly solar power generation, and that's something that that creates the Plan Sonora. The Plan Sonora is an example of what is needed in this region, and Sonora and Arizona can contribute to give more resilience to the system if we take these numbers as indicative of what we need in the system, in the electric system in Mexico.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank Arizona State University for the invitation. Thank you, Iracema, and also Rodríguez Ábalos and Asociado Chucho. Muchas gracias, Mate. Very, very happy to be here. My name is Vania Laban. I work at a transmission company for natural gas called Essentia Energy Pipelines, and I also represent the Mexican Gas Association. The Mexican Gas Association has been working for over 30 years. It encompasses the presence of around 80 companies, private sector companies, that have invested around $35 billion in Mexico's infrastructure. As you know, the interconnection and what we've been talking, energy is essential for growth, for the economic growth of our region. Mexico and the US have become, their trading relationship has become the most relevant for both countries. And natural gas in this area is not the exception. When we think about the growth of both economies, we need energy. The US is also going to be demanding, as Abraham was mentioning, important increases in generation capacity. The technology developments, artificial intelligence, and all the technological challenges ahead of us will require abundant electricity. And natural gas is the natural link for developing those infrastructures. Particularly in Mexico, we are extremely dependent on natural gas. Around 60% of our power generation comes from natural gas, and of that generation, around 70 to 80% is imported via the US. So the closeness to the US makes it the logical market. We are very privileged by the economic prices that the market offers. We have access to the lowest and cheapest natural gas with Waha and the Permian Basin, and also the Texan region, offering very competitive prices to develop a strong industry and offering the energy needed for growth. In that sense, in Mexico, as Juan Pablo was mentioning, we have around 24 interconnection points. 4 of them are located here in Arizona. And we bring that 80% or 70% of natural gas to Mexico for developing power and building the industrial capacity that we need. And with the nearshoring opportunities, we're going to be hopefully attracting these investments. I was reading that around 400 new companies are looking to be based either in Mexico or in the US. So I think that this interdependence and collaborative work will be growing in the years to come. For the US also, the abundant energy supply that Mexico can bring in terms of renewable energies is going to be playing a very important role. And I think that our region is one of the richest in the world to provide the energy and the resources that are needed for these economies to prosper. So with that, I would leave my participation at this first stage, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ken Ulrich. I'm Director of Business Development at Kinder Morgan. The group that I'm in at Kinder Morgan, it's the Natural Gas West region. I'm based in Colorado Springs. I would say that my customer group, and I was really excited to participate in this symposium because two of my biggest customer groups, one is in Arizona, and the second is in Mexico. And I see a lot of benefits with developing infrastructure that meets the needs on both sides of the border. I've been involved the last 12 years. I've developed some of the larger expansion projects on our EP&G system, El Paso Natural Gas and Sierrita Pipeline. But both, all the expansions, the big expansions that I've worked on in the last 10 or 12 years, I've had a mix of customers, the US customers and also in Mexico. And we're not done. There's a tremendous need. It was mentioned earlier, the LNG opportunities on the west coast of Mexico. There's a tremendous need in Arizona. And so it's just a natural fit, building pipeline expansion facilities. You go through the Arizona corridor and turn south, and it benefits all the communities. It was mentioned about the power that's been added in Mexico. I think it was double in the last 15 years, 32 gigawatts, and added another. It's the same with the cross-border pipeline capacity. Over the last 15 years, we've more or less doubled that capacity, and it takes a tremendous amount of work, and you've got to convince all the stakeholders that it's a project. The project makes sense. And I do try to educate when I talk to folks in different agencies or in the government that sometimes there is a concern that we're sending U.S. natural gas over to Mexico. It should stay here, it should stay in Arizona or stay in the U.S. But it's, a lot of these projects, we do need to educate. I try to do that, educate our stakeholders that it's not a zero-sum game. What benefits Mexico benefits us, and so that's really all the opening remarks I'd like to make. But I look forward to Q&A and talking about some of the challenges and opportunities that we have in front of us right now. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, how are you? I'm work in Rodriguez Dávalos. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I think that you told everything. So, well, how can I resume? Well, the energy matrix is really interesting. It's really important. And like Ken says, we live an integration between Mexico and US, in particular with Arizona and Sonora. And the natural gas is the key bond for this structure. And this is the part, or the third part, for the nearshoring. For the nearshoring, we need water, natural gas, and electricity. So we have two components, and before we have one. So it's really important for us to have that. But another really component that I think is important is the education, is the universities, the research that can help us to develop new technology or take the advantage for the existing technology. So the energy corridor, Arizona and Sonora, I really believe that is something interesting. And also another interesting topic is what can we learn for another experience. In the first panel, Mario says or talk about Dubai. So Sonora, Dubai, Arizona have the same weather or something like that. So maybe we can learn something, another experience. Well, as I say, you say everything, but we are ready.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with a round of questions, okay? And each of you gets your own question. Also, we're doing okay on time, but just be mindful. That way we can get through more discussion and have a Q&A at the end. So I'm going to start with Juan Pablo. How can the USMCA framework be leveraged to foster greater collaboration between the United States and Mexico in the energy sector, specifically in the Arizona-Sonora region?
Well, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement can be leveraged to foster greater collaboration in several ways. Renewable energy, as I mentioned in the first talk, we have to encourage joint projects in solar and wind energy, taking advantage of the region high solar irradiance and wind resources. That will be key for leverage this trade agreement. But with the renewables, as you know, renewables are intermittent sources of energy. So we need to have energy storage. Collaborate on energy storage project will be key to ensure stable and reliable energy sources. Right now, there's many new technologies for power storage and not also natural gas, but for electricity storage that will be able to have this reliable energy supply. And also energy trade, we need to simplify our regulations to promote the imports and exports of electricity, of natural gas. We have many advantages on trying to deregulate the energy sectors in Mexico, also in the United States. But improving and promoting the energy trade between the two regions could be the key and essential for driving economic growth and energy security for the region.
Thank you. Simplification. Well, I have a question for you, Abram. What role should the federal and state governments play in ensuring that energy policies align with the economic and community development goals in the Arizona-Sonora region?
Well, I think it's very important to have that coordination because it's very different in the U.S. compared to Mexico. And in Mexico, the energy sector is regulated at a federal level. In the U.S., you have federal and state level regulations for the energy sectors. And so in the U.S., it's more important that kind of coordination. But let me say that for the future, I believe that we have a very good opportunity to see a more integration between the U.S. and Mexico in the energy sector. And what I mean is that we need to have a regional view that can benefit both countries. The USMCA is a very good example of the two countries taking benefits of the trade, of the investment, and we can do that also in the energy sector because we have complementary resources. In Mexico, we have a lot of potential for renewables. In the US, the US has the cheapest and cleanest natural gas that we use in Mexico. So if we see the region as one policy in the energy sector, thinking on this integration, thinking on taking advantage of these complementary resources, and we build a balanced energy matrix, thinking in both countries, we can benefit a lot of that.
I hear you. I hear this regional approach and integration. Very nice. I'm going to move to Vanya and ask you, what are the main challenges and opportunities in enhancing cross-border energy infrastructure? And how do you think these can be addressed?
I think I'm going to be a bit repetitive here, but I think part of the challenge when you're talking about cross-border infrastructure projects that are very capital intensive is the fact that we have a very broad disparity between the policies and the regulations that exist between two countries. Also the differences in the energy policy, environmental issues, and all these things become, at the end, barriers for investment. So I think in order to really have a successful integration and be able to exploit the potential resources of each of the countries, we need to work together. There's been a lot of work in the cross-border agencies to try to find common grounds, but I think that more discussion and planning ahead of these issues will become very relevant, including also early conversations with communities because of the impact and the necessity to have like the support of communities, which has become every time more relevant to develop this project. So I think in the end, working together, having perhaps one regulatory agency with the same principles that actually help foster these projects will be very, very relevant.
Thank you. So I hear you speaking to the communities and the need to really build there. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Ken, I do have a question for you, and that is, I'm interested in what business development strategies you would recommend for the future of the energy sector, particularly among these regions.
Well, first, I think we need to educate the stakeholders. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about energy and what's good energy and bad energy. I think there's a place for energy, all types that we're using today. There's benefits, there's downsides as well of all forms of energy. But it's very difficult, to build these large assets, and there is environmental disturbance involved. Building pipelines, building gas storage facilities, building power plants. People need to know where their energy comes from, just like we need to know where our food comes from, where our water comes from. And there's a lot of really strong opinions about energy that I hear about, and I sometimes get reactions from folks when I what industry are you in? And I explain that I develop natural gas pipelines, that some people step back a little bit. But I think that, and that also extends at the project level, I would say, developing a project. But it starts with a broader discussion. But at the project level, it's talking to the landowners, all the stakeholders, the local, state, federal government, and the communities that you're in, and your customers. that's just my off-the-cuff reaction to that. I mean, I'm sure there's more. You could go deeper than that, but I mean, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And some of the challenges we face in developing infrastructure, I think, is due to lack of understanding, and you have to convince folks there is a public need, because it does there are impacts to the public. So you have to convince the public and the communities that there's a public need here, and that's how we get things done.
That's very helpful. So thinking through the trade-offs and also understanding the need to educate pretty much across the board. Connects very much with what Vanya was saying about communities. So here we are. And I have a question for you. What are the key infrastructure projects currently being developed, and how do they contribute to energy security in North America?
Yeah, of course. Well, the key project is, I think so, the pipelines. We need to support the pipelines, because with the pipelines we can generate power. So we need the pipelines, and like Juan Pablo says, the solar panels are intermittent, but also we need to contribute with solar panels. So first of all, we need the pipelines. Also, we need the storage. We need the storage in US or in Mexico. And the solar panel, we need to develop in a small scale and the biggest scale. We need to work on that. And in Sonora, in particular, maybe we need to work with the lithium, because it's another good option that we have, and we need to participate in more activity in the lithium.
Very interesting. Jump in, Abraham.
Just adding at what Bruno just mentioned, I think that we also need to work in transmission lines, transborder transmission lines. Between Sonora and Arizona, we don't have transmission lines for electricity. And in Baja California and California, we have a very good example on how to take advantage of that. This is my other hat as Sempra. We have renewables in Baja California, and we export electricity to California because we have transmission lines. So some specific infrastructure between Sonora and Arizona that is needed is transmission lines.
Very interesting. So what I'll do next is a little bit different. Anybody can jump into this question. How can the Arizona-Sonora region mitigate the impact of geopolitical shocks on energy production and pricing? And what role can regional cooperation play in this regard?
Well, I think diversifying the energy sources will be key. Right now, I have here some numbers, but probably more than 50% of the electricity generation in this area are fossil fuels, gas power plants, and coal. As we mentioned, the Sonora region have a big potential for renewable energies. But we also need to promote a regional market to have these two regions integrated. As Abraham said, we have the cheapest gas on the Permian basis, and we could have a big potential for renewables. So these two regions should be integrated in a regional market. As we mentioned, the regulation in Mexico, it's way too back from the U.S. Probably we have an open market around 7 years ago, so we're moving slowly, but I think in a correct way to start improving regional markets and setting the basis for this trade of energy between Mexico and the U.S.
Got it. So I hear a lot about the integration, the need for thinking from a more regional perspective, and I'm wondering, and also I hear you speaking to a portfolio of energy, right? Looking at the trade-offs. So what are the potential risks of over-dependence on a single energy source or a single geopolitical ally? And how do you think the region as a whole can diversify its energy portfolio to really enhance energy security?
You want to take that?
So one very clear example of that is what I was mentioning in terms of natural gas for Mexico. Around 70% of the natural gas needs of the country come from the US. And I would also like to link it to what Ken was saying. This project and why this is happening is because it makes economic sense. I mentioned previously the lowest natural gas prices at Waha. This year alone, around 100 days, Waha has registered negative prices for natural gas, which means that producers are actually paying the people wanting the gas to take it out of their systems. So the US is very, very abundant in this resource, and we in Mexico are taking advantage of that opportunity. But that is not to say that there isn't a risk. As you were mentioning, I think that the energy security is not so much related to where the resources come from, but how can you diversify and make sure you're able to cover your country's needs. So in this case, we are becoming very vulnerable. Mexico has not invested sufficiently in storage for natural gas, for example, and there's huge opportunities there. We have also not made the significant investments in infrastructure redundancy along the pipeline systems. And there are some states in the country that have no access to natural gas. So even though the interlink between the two countries is very welcomed and makes sense, countries independently, I think, need to make the decisions of how to balance and diversify their own needs and make sure that you're not over-dependent on one single target, no?
Got it. Jump in, Abram.
Just to reinforce Vania's idea that energy diversification is key for each region and for each state. Each state has a different way to solve the energy or energy solutions. For example, in Arizona, you have the solar as the cheapest source of energy. Other states in the U.S. has natural gas as the cheapest and easiest way to resolve to have the energy solution. So each state is very different, but each state has this diversification because it will give to the state energy security resilience that is needed for the system. And again, we need to think in a more regional way in order to have this energy security and also this more balanced energy matrix as a regional view.
Thank you. I'm just conscious of time here, so one final question and then some Q&A from the audience. What is the vision? What is the vision for Arizona-Sonora region's energy sector over the next decade? How do we realize this through partnerships, for example? Any ideas?
Well, this is just my vision, but it's capturing opportunity, and you need energy for the nearshoring manufacturing, and the trade of goods and services. We're at an interesting time, and how we proceed and how we capture this, if we capture this opportunity, it's going to depend on having reliable energy and having redundant infrastructure, not just too much is at stake to have razor thin margins of capacity. It's the costs are too great. So I think that's something we all need to consider.
Well said. Bruno, final word.
Oh, thank you. Maybe only continue with the Ken idea. I think that in the future we have a better matrix of energy and a diversified matrix. So, but based on natural gas. So I really think that it's our future of the energy, at least in this energy creator.
Well, I am going to open it up to the audience. I think do we have some people who can help with microphones? I can do that. Question over here.
Thank you. And it's just a comment more than a question. You mentioned about diversification of energy sources. And in the speeches, in the forums and everywhere, we talk about the communication, diversification, that things. But to bring this idea and land it to the industry, to the engineers, for example, currently they are working, a lot of companies for engineering in process plants, in manufacturing plants, in food plants, that they are thinking that the only solution for getting the heat that they need in their plants is coming from natural gas. Natural gas is a very good solution, but it's not the unique solution for heating, you know? More when we are in this air conditioning in Phoenix and Sonora and Arizona, to burn gas, natural gas, to produce, to heat water is like burn gas natural for produce ice in Greenland, you know? It's like why we are not using what is free, because it's free. And okay, it's technology, okay, but technology already exists, but sometimes we need to go back a little bit and see that a lot of the structure that we have in economy is because our financial or economy systems are focusing in the fossil fuels and that things, and it's very necessary to, for example, when you want to do something and sell something, you need to have credit, okay? And you don't have right now the current, in these times, the timing of the financial programs to, ¿cómo se dice amortizar? You know? To amortize the cost of the infrastructure, you know? For example, you go to the bank, they will give you a credit for 5 years, but maybe you need 7 for another technology or 8 for other technology. Once you finish to amortize that infrastructure, after that day, it's going to be free, you know? And then this kind of, when we're informed like this, there is the topic of the water, the topic of the energy, the topic of the communication. But the same way Sonora and Arizona is like linked and interconnected in a lot of things, the same happened with the issues that we are talking. We cannot talk about water without talking about energy and finance and politics and everything, and labor, whatever. Then my comment is we need to focus on landing the current solution that we have and this kind of ideas to the engineers, to the designers, to the people who really is working on their computers right now, designing something, thinking in only 2 or 3 solutions when they already have, in economy basis, more solutions that are more sustainable, they're going to be free in a long time. And if they start growing with this kind of infrastructure, if the demand of this technology grows, it's going to be cheaper, you know. Then we need to push on that focus on that way is my comment. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
May I?
Up in the back.
May I do a comment about?
Yes,
this?
while he's running the microphone.
Something
go ahead, Gabriel.
that we don't speak a lot in the panel is about the government's role. No? It's very important, the role of governments, and what you mentioned is very important for that. The coordination of policies is something that we cannot do. The coordination of policies is something that the energy policy should be consistent with the water the waters policy, with the minerals policy, because if we want to decarbonize the economy and to electrify the economy, we need to coordinate the energy policy with the minerals policy, because we will need more minerals for that, no? But this is the kind of things that that the government has to do, and we need to push our governments to do that, no?
Thank you. Comment in the back.
Yes,
Question in the back.
it's a question. I have a question. It seems to me that we are in the middle of one of those moments in which we are authorized to imagine the future, to visualize the future. I mean, have a vision and develop these long-term, very powerful projects. One of the things that I was thinking when I was listening to you is that we have a problem of uneven type of development. I mean, there is an opportunity, obviously, here, and we have to do whatever we can to capture that opportunity for the benefit of the region. So what I was wondering, if you have any idea, any suggestion, any thinking about how can we use this opportunity, this very moment, to close the gap that exists between the Mexican side and the US side of the border. I think it's a very challenging issue, but I would like to hear from you if you have any suggestion in that regard.
Abram and Vania.
No, sorry for using. I think that with the change in the federal administrations in both countries, we will have the opportunity to have a more integration in this kind of policies. No? We know that, for example, California and Baja California works a lot together. Sonora and Arizona, those the same. But we need to try also that the federal governments can specifically in the energy sector to be more coordinated in those kind of policies. And we can have this opportunity because we will have 2 new federal administrations in the coming months.
Thank you. Vania, do you want to jump in?
Well, just thinking about the comment the previous gentleman led to the table, I was thinking of what you were saying, that in each industry there tends to be like blindness, and people just produce what they produce and not really think of how to maximize or do it better. I'm more optimist, I think, in that regard, because I think there's other industries actually looking to make it differently and use different alternatives and energy sources. And I think that I can link to the other question in the sense that change is happening very, very fast now. And I think we cannot imagine actually what will happen in the near future with all the technology advances that we're facing. But I think that in general, the way that we as a region and each country moves is looking for the best opportunities. And in that sense, I think that the needs that are out there are simply going to find ways to cover or have a solution for those using what's available. And I think that we will have more options going forward. And I think that what we really need to focus and take care of, and this includes what Abraham was saying, is governments need to align in the sense of facilitating those channels. We cannot make policy as companies, we cannot make or look at the region as a whole. That has to come from the governments, and I think that in the end, the region works that way, and we'll have to pass or look past our differences right now and the political conjuncture that we're facing to make the best for both countries.
Thank you. I think we have time for one final question. Over here. He gets to run.
Hi. Well, I would like to know your opinion about energy security. Energy security for both for the United States and for Mexico. You know, because importing natural gas from the States has been an issue also for Mexico. No? Some years ago, there was a huge natural disaster in Texas, no? And then the natural gas was not was not able to be imported from Mexico, and then was well, the result was an apagón, no? On the a blackout on Mexico because of lack of natural gas. Well, that's an issue that I would like to put on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. So energy security, Ken.
So I think the event, was this in 2021? Was it the winter storm Uri in Texas where the freezing temperatures came down? And yeah, and I did hear that some of in the state of Texas, you have some pipelines that are regulated by the state of Texas. And so I think that even though that was unfortunate for our neighbors south of the border, I think it was unique to that particular market. I can say that as it relates to interstate pipelines, that did not happen, or at least I'm not aware that it happened. It's, that was federal. We're regulated. I work for the interstate side of the business, and we're federally regulated, and so hopefully that's not something that's going to be recurring into the future. At least I don't anticipate it with interstate federally regulated pipelines.
Any final word here?
And yeah, maybe Juan Pablo can remember that February. It was really crazy. But maybe that's interesting to have a diversification of energy to try to cover that. To try to cover with solar panels, with windy, with even another technologies to have more power, because otherwise we have that risk, even it's not expected right now. But also the storage is another important element that we can use. So yeah, the energy security is key for that one.
If I may add something really quick, I think that for Mexico in particular, energy security is becoming a very pressing issue. As Abraham mentioned, we suffered from blackouts at some point because our system is running at its margins and its capacities, and also in gas, because of the over-dependence on imported gas, we have neglected producing our own gas and also developing the infrastructure. But in summary, this is a concern, and the country is aware of that and has planned a very significant investment program for meeting the needs of the country. And that is going to create opportunities, as we were saying, hopefully for the region as a whole, because the investment is going to come from private companies in different schemes with the government, but it will have to be covered and addressed. So I think that's also an area of opportunity going forward.
I think there's one final comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick clarification on what the gentleman told about that storm that happened some years ago. The U.S. government never cut the gas flowing to Mexico, intrastate or in any kind of pipelines. They didn't cut it. The governor of Texas tried to do it, but the federal government didn't do it. So it was more a storm that froze some of the pipelines, but yeah, there is a national security issue that we are importing between 75 and 80% of our gas. No, that doesn't mean that someday could happen, but in that case, the gas kept flowing.
Very good point. I think Ken was
follow up on that national security and being overly dependent potentially on U.S. gas, that being Mexico. Right now gas is predominantly flowing south of the border, but I do think as you build, we need to build stronger ties between our countries, more interdependency, and I think that will create, if we're all in it together and there's that interdependency, and what I'm thinking is there are opportunities to move gas back into the United States. Arizona is one state in particular that could, where you could see that happening at some point. And so I think, if we have those types of dynamics where energy is flowing in both directions, I think that helps us.
Well, thank you so much. I want to extend my gratitude to this tremendous panel and yourselves for the conversation. And